Hello, friends, and welcome to the Mindfulness Advantage Show, where we engage in essential conversations with ordinary people just like you, achieving the extraordinary. I'm your host, George E. Green, CEO and creator of the Mindfulness Advantage Advanced Training and Mentoring Systems. Our commitment to you each and every week, my friends, is to bring you relevant, resonant, thoughtful, focused, and provocative conversations and content more than worthy of your sharing and replay. I partner with, train, and mentor people from all walks of life, from blue-collar to business executive, in an elegantly simple yet profoundly powerful set of tools, trainings, and daily practice. My client partners and I collaborate together in creating massive upgrades in their focus, presence, purpose, productivity, and most importantly, creating greater satisfaction and fulfillment within their lives and their worlds. If you desire and choose to imagine more, to imagine better, then join me and join our special featured guests right here every week on our new playground. This is your next and greatest adventure. Let's play. Today, my featured guest is radio broadcaster, podcaster, and podcast trainer, Shannon Hernandez. Together, we'll be exploring how you can find and cultivate your public social media presence and voice through the art and performance of podcasting. We'll be bringing Shannon on in just a moment, right after our opening segment, First Words. Excuse me. Friends, finding your way, establishing your space and place in the social media spheres is an ever-evolving art of engagement, expression, and content creation. The reality here is we are all steeped in a culture of massive distraction, microscopic attention spans, and our potential audiences, our tribes, are and have been completely fire-hosed and leveraged with every conceivable marketing approach imaginable. What we all desire and require, first and foremost, is an authentic voice to resonate with and listen to. We each respond enthusiastically to meaningful storytelling and on-the-ground solutions rather than slick and sophisticated selling techniques. To quote our friend Wade Harmon, our true success hinges simply upon becoming a hero to one individual at a time. It's way past time to stop marketing to the masses. So today, my featured guest, Shannon Hernandez, and I are exploring your next adventure in authentic engagement and expression, finding and cultivating your presence and public voice through the art of podcasting. If you desire to build your own tribe, your own faithful fan base of friends and partners, you've come to the right show, friends. Please join me in welcoming Shan Hernandez to the broadcast. Shannon, thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
Thanks, George. I appreciate you having me today.
Well, let's get started. One of the things I love to do is bring on people who are passionate. Very clearly, how many years have you been on the radio now?
15 years.
15 years. That is a great story of longevity. And plus, you've been a teacher, or were a teacher, for many years. So let's go kind of roll back to your origin story and talk a little about your transition from teaching to full-time radio.
Right. Well, teaching, when I first got into being a teacher, that was about 7 years ago. I had already been working at the radio station at 98 KUPD for about 4 years. And so when I had decided to go into teaching and start going back to school for that and getting my master's degree, I had made this promise to myself that if I could not get a full-time job in the radio industry, that I would just go ahead and I would move forward with just the secondary plan, the backup plan, and by saying I'll go be a high school English teacher, and I will go ahead and start building out my life with the wife, the kid, whoever it may be. And at that point, if radio didn't pan out, hey, I gave it a good shot. Now, around that time, I was traveling back and forth between Tempe, Arizona, and Globe, Arizona. Globe, Arizona is about 80 miles east of Phoenix, of Tempe. So every day I was going back and forth, traveling and commuting. During the first school year that I had ever taught, I had it was some people call it perseverance, dedication. I was just trying to get my master's degree, but at all the same time I was still working at the radio station because it was something that I truly loved. I loved being at the radio station. So for a year that happened, and I was very exhausted by the end of that entire year. I had finally acquired the master's degree, and I was ready to become a full-time teacher. And at that time, I became a full-time teacher at another high school, which was about 60 miles closer. And so I taught high school English language and composition, which was rhetoric back then. And so I was teaching that, and it was getting to the point to where I was getting very burned out with working 6 to 7 days a week. I just didn't like the idea that I was working so much, and really didn't have a girlfriend, didn't have any set plan, nothing really. So I had said by the end of that school year, I would go ahead and I would quit radio, and I would jump into radio. I would quit radio and I'd just be a full-time teacher, and I would just hopefully help the future of the country by that point. It wasn't even about the future of the country. It was just trying to inspire new minds to get out there and do some amazing things. Around that time, it was back in December of, I would say like '05, '06 maybe, my program director walked up to me in the studio and he says, we had a couple people leave, and we are ready to hire someone out, but we want to make sure that you are interested because you'll be our first pick if that's the case. And I said, okay, I'll go ahead and I could do that. And so he says, okay, we'll figure something out. And a couple days later, or maybe it was a week, I can't remember, he came back to me and he said, we want to give you the job. And I said, okay, great. And I was like, can you really hold off until like May though? And hiring, of course, employers aren't going to say like, oh, sure, of course, because they need someone to fill that position. And the reason why I did that, I asked that, is because I still had to go through the second semester of teaching high school. And I was working from about 7 o'clock in the morning and until about 4 o'clock at night or in the evening. And that was just going to be tough for me. And the position that I was going to get at the radio station was going to be from 7 p.m. until midnight. So I would be working most of the days with basically a 3-hour break. And I told him, I said, well, I guess I'll go ahead and do it. So around that time, for about 4.5 months, I worked those hours. I was going home about midnight and waking up at about 5, getting ready, going to school, teaching a 0 hour, and then doing it all day, and then going to work, doing my on-air shift, and then coming home, grading some papers, going to bed, and I just continued to do that cycle over and over. But the end goal the goal was always to be in radio full time, and I knew it was going to pay off. I feel still to this day bad that the kids didn't learn what they should have learned at that time, because I feel like I cheated them out of an education that they deserve so much. But when I came back, when as I got older, and of course I was out in the bar circuit for the radio station, and a couple of my former students had walked up and they said, what you taught us in that year that you took the radio job, they said what you taught us was more than anything that our college instructors ever taught us. And that was
Big
really
time.
flattering. That was really flattering to me, because all I felt I did was I showed movies. That's all I
Well,
felt I did.
isn't it interesting? And I can really relate to this, that when we're at that decision point, often we are our worst critic first.
Sure.
And so you really had a judgment on yourself about cheating these kids, and then down the line some of them show up and say, that was the best learning I got on was with you.
Sure.
And I really think that's a reflection, one, of choice based in integrity. You didn't tap out, you didn't bail, because you're invested in the success and the education of these kids. And now and in recent history, education is a shambles. And so anytime, first and foremost, teachers are underpaid, and it's one of the most valuable positions we have in our culture. So it's one, for you not to be jaded is fabulous. Two, to make choices based on the benefits of others, being oriented towards service, really stands apart. And the fact that right when you're ready to quit, boom, the opportunity shows up, is it's a great example and a great story of just keeping your head down. And quite often, if you stretch beyond the day where you're like, I'm done, that's when you'll see your results. So, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. In fact, I heard a quote years ago, and it was I can't remember the exact quote, but it was by the country star Shania Twain, and she had said that about the time when she was ready to quit, that was when things started to really kind of kick off and roll for her. So a lot of it had to deal with perseverance, and a lot of it had to deal with the dedication, and that's something that I think a lot of us struggle with. We struggle with the dedication and the perseverance to really stick with something so much that. That we feel like there won't be a reward at the very end of it, and I still struggle with this to this day. I think in most recently for me has been the struggle of weight loss and of health altogether. I've always been I consider myself a pretty healthy guy, but it wasn't until back in October that I had found myself really suffering health wise. I knew I wanted to do this entrepreneur game. I wanted to go out. I wanted to educate and teach people, but I could not find the ground, and I couldn't find the base or the foundation of the dedication at all. I couldn't find that anywhere. And for me, it was really rooted in fitness and nutrition. And I thought, if I can't even commit to eating right and to committing to an exercise routine at least a half an hour a day, what makes you think that I can actually go out there and teach these people? I know I'm a great teacher, but I also know that I have to go out and I have to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to have to sell. I'm going to have to do a number of things. So it's been a real process for me to get to that point to where I could actually walk up to someone and say hello to them, but not with the intention of saying that I want to take from you, because I really truly just want to give back. I mean, you'll hear that a lot. You'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, I just want to give, I want to give," but you really have to dig down deep, super deep inside of your own psyche, and you have to tell yourself, how far am I willing to go with this? How far am I willing to go to launch a podcast, to launch a product, to launch a business? How far am I willing to take myself? It's because along the way you're going to be met with a ton of blowback and pushback and naysayers, and people are going to tell you, well, I don't believe that you're doing that. You might run into financial problems. You might run into the day where you're like, well, I have no money today. I need to pay for these 5 bills, and I just have zero money, but you know, I need to eat too. And it's just going to be a balancing act. So there's levels of where you can find yourself, but it'll also test the character of who you are.
Exactly. And really, when we see the models, and I really consider you to be somebody that's modeling integrity and success, when we see people like you, we're reminded of what I love to call our greater purpose. And the people out there that are successful, that have stepped through, around, under, over their challenges, have done so and have the tenacity to do so because the animus, the animating force for going forward is our love, our heart. When we're passionate and we're focused on a great purpose, which is, one, to serve other people first and foremost, we will have the help, the support, the providence to get through those valleys of the shadow. And you talked a lot about, pushback, blowback, people, naysayers. That's on the external. Then, because we're pursuing a vision and a dream that's much bigger than us, we're always going to encounter resistance from within,
Exactly.
because
Yeah.
we, in order to succeed, in order to flesh out our dreams and allow them to have blood and breath and life, we've got to stretch every day. And I definitely resonate with okay, I'm ready to generate a new miracle and pay some bills today. That's part of being an entrepreneur. That's part of being a visionary, and that's part of being committed to being in service. It's not about us. And the tight wire act is the balance between your vision and trusting that when you're aligned with your greater purpose and your love and your passion, that the world and the universe will ultimately support us.
Yeah, I think I lately I've been really big into watching this particular video. I can post it in the events page, but it's
Please do.
a real inspirational video with a lot of inspirational speeches behind it. And I think when you talk about like a lot of the external pushback that you get from people who tell you that you can't do something, that really feeds into your psyche. And then you start thinking to yourself, I can't do this. So I make it a point every day, not only like I told you, to find some exercise. If I can't, like today was a day where I couldn't find exercise. It was just impossible to just with the schedule that I had. But when I do have my days where I am pretty much every day doing exercise, I listen to this video, and there's an excellent quote from Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone in the final Rocky movie, and he talks about life and how hard life can hit you, and like no one is going to hit as hard as life, but you have to be willing to take the punches, and it's going to hit you so hard and put you on the ground that you have to be willing to take the punches and take the hits. But the key is to get back up and keep moving forward, because that's how you win every time. Not just with people, but for within yourself. You just have to keep moving forward. We always have to celebrate, I think, the small wins. For myself, I've been able to re-explore that with my own weight loss, with my own thriving ability to help people and give, and my business. That has been very important for me. So I just try to celebrate the wins. It seems like there are a lot more failures than anything. Any entrepreneur that you meet, in fact, I'm over here at this incubator here in Phoenix today, and we were talking yesterday about how many entrepreneurs just fail, and that can get really deep inside of your mind. And
Especially Shan, if you're keeping score.
yeah,
And here's the reality. I'm going to paraphrase and murder this quote, but Michael, gosh darn it, a basketball player, Michael Jordan. He had all these scoring records and so many wins and championship wins, and he reframed it and he said, everybody thinks that I have this great profinity for high scores and miraculous events, and achievements, but the reality is he lost a ton
yeah,
of times. He missed shots a ton of times. So if you're keeping score, it's going to seem like it sucks. You have to keep your eye on the prize. You have to remember why you're doing it and not take things personally. We're going to pause just a second for show ID. You're watching a Mindfulness Advantage show, and we have our friend on today, Shannon Hernandez. We're going to jump over to comments real quick. And my sister from a different mister, Christine L. Bowen, checking in from Washington, D.C. It's good to see you, Christine.
hi Christine.
Nazim, where is he? In the zone to watch my bro, Shannon Hernandez. And
Brazil.
this is Nazim's first time in the live tribe, so welcome. Thanks for joining us, Nazim. Christine L. Bowen says, the punches make us stronger. Personally, I like to dodge and duck the punches rather than stop them with my face. I have a couple of scars going on here, and hopefully I've learned and gained wisdom from taking the shots. Let's see, what else do we have here? Elaine Nieberding's in the house. We'll just do some quick shout-outs. Sheila Hensley, keeping score. So right, George Green. Catherine Simblin, the journey of a rocket to the moon is 97% off course. Holy cow. Now look at that. The miracle of the moon shot and the moon landing. Hundreds of thousands of moving parts, brand new technology. 3 guys who risked their lives to ride a rocket into space, and holy cow, they did it. We can do the same thing too. So let's circle back around and talk about the power of our conscious, intentional voices, and let's talk a little bit about one of your passions, which is training people in podcasting. It's not enough to have a show like this. It's not enough to have a podcast. If you don't have a purpose and a reason, if you're not aligned with service, then you're just talking to be heard. And people are so sophisticated now, and as I said in the open, people have the attention span of a ferret on candy bars and 3 shots of espresso.
I've never heard
So
it
you
like
was
that.
yeah. So, and here's an amazing metric just to lead into your feedback. Is about 13 years ago, when I was really studying engagement and web design and all that stuff, we had 13 seconds to resonate with our visitors and give them a reason to stick around. 6 years ago, that was 6 seconds. A year ago, it was 3 seconds. So now we have 3 seconds to resonate, give people a reason to stay, and then continue to feed their curiosity and their need to know, their need to engage in authentic storytelling. So let's talk a little bit about your playground of training people to podcast and claiming their public voice.
Right. Podcasting is still it's still a word that needs to be defined for a lot of people, because although we use it and it can be used in the way that you say broadcasting, it still is not broadcasting. Podcasting can be just about anything that you want it to be with a piece of audio, and you could put it out there and people can listen to it. However, if you're going to add the add the element of making it sound like broadcasting, then I think that we should start considering it to be a platform like broadcasting. As you said, George, people's attention span when it comes to listening to something is so short. In radio, I know this just being in radio for all these years, that most people listen to a piece of your content, whether that be music or whether that be talk radio, on an average, just on an average, it might be a little higher for talk radio, but on an average, it's about 7 minutes before someone says, all right, I'm done, I'm out. I can't listen to this anymore. So the idea and the reason why you hear a lot of radio stations these days interchanging with different commercials, maybe it's a traffic report, maybe if it's a different bid or a segment, is so that they can maintain and retain that person over the course of time. That's what I try to teach people within my podcasting course and training them. I just released and launched a podcasting product, and still that product has something that I have done a little more research on that will be added into that product, because I think it's very important that we know that when you're going to create a product or a podcast of sorts, you have to keep the retention of the people. Because I know for myself that when I go in and I listen to a podcast and I'm trying to listen as a listener, if I'm not captured, like you said, within the first 3 seconds, I'm out. I'm thinking about, I'm thinking about which destination I have to go to. I'm thinking about which appointment I need to set. I'm thinking about, do I need to go see my niece that day? So if I am not engaged by that moment, if the topic does not resonate with me, then I'm out. And that's what's I think very important when I teach these people. Or I shouldn't even call them people, because they are dedicated students who want to change the world. That's what radio broadcasting is. That is what podcasting is. That is what content creation is. It's about changing the world and making the world a better place. There's a lot of negativity in the world. We cannot have that. So that's what these people are intending to do.
Amen. Can a brother get a boom in this room or what? Man, I mean, that is it. That is it. You got to have a purpose and a reason. And that's, see, what you did was really take your definition of your client partners, your students, to a deeper, more meaningful level. And that is, I'm going to go out on a limb and say what I heard you say is that you desire and require to play with people who are here to make a frickin' difference in the world.
Yeah, I think that's important. I mean, I'll tell you one thing, George, and it'll kind of circle back to the whole fitness and nutrition thing. If it was not for the internet and a content creator, I'll tell you right now, I probably wouldn't have. I'd probably be in a hospital right now, and I'd probably be having to deal with some type of blood problem, blood issues, levels. Who knows? If I hadn't have read a blog, that's all it took, was just reading one blog. And the significant data that was inside of that blog to allow me to apply that data to my daily regimen so that I could make a change. And that's what I think people can do with a podcast. Not all the time can people sit there and read a blog. They just can't. I mean, I know I'm on the go all the time, so the content that I provide or that I choose to listen to is in the form of a podcast. It's like talk radio. So if there's a way that I can teach or I can learn through someone teaching on a podcast or being edutained, I would rather take that because I'm still able to consume that content and to still be loyal to that person's content over time. And then at the time, whenever I happen to be on my phone or I'm in front of my laptop, I can jump in and I can check out the additional content on their blog that's written out, or maybe it's a hangout or whatever it may be. So podcasting is just another means and another way that we can get that content out there to help entertain, educate, and teach people about the world and help each other. You're just trying to help and lift each other up.
You rather directly answered a question from CLB. Christine L. Bowen, she asked, would you say that voice and or video would be more compelling than text only, referencing the attention span of audience/nat?
I think it's a real interesting question, Christine, because I think voice, when you think about voice, you're captured by them, like with the headphones. You might be running, you might be in the car, you might be on a commute somewhere, and so you're captivated by that person. You're only with them at that point. Now, if you're a person who loves to multitask and you have ADD and you're on a blog while you're listening to the podcast, it's probably not going to work. But I think for the most part, when we are engaged with something that is within our ears, we are captivated. It's just one audience. It's one person that we're listening to, and the audience is listening to everything that we have to say or our guest has to say. Same thing with say a hangout or some type of TV or video. If you choose to watch that video, you'll be just as captivated. I believe it just depends on the environment that you're going to be in. Where are you going to be? If you're, like I said here, I'm in an incubator. I might read more blogs than I might listen to or watch a video. So it's important to kind of be in all spaces and aspects of the process. This is why I highly, highly encourage people to record their podcasts inside of Google Hangouts, because the ability to repurpose that content out there makes it much easier. So if they didn't catch the live version, they can catch the audio version.
Well, and the reality is, I just closed a consulting job with a young fella here just outside of Boulder and Gun Barrel who wants to become a podcaster. One, I'm referring him to your training program, but also because we're in and steeped in the culture, the relationship building culture of G+. It makes perfect sense, but to have the origin of your podcast be a hangout on air where you can repurpose it. You have used the foundation of your podcast with Google Plus and YouTube as the backbone. That you can't get any smarter than that. I need to jump in here for 1 second because your bra, Bill Reed.
What's up, Billy Reed?
Hey, Billy boy. So he's got a great comment here. Sorry, the quote below. Hang on, where am I going here? All right. Sorry, the quote below is a little late in the convo here, but I wanted to mention it. It's really mention worthy. And the quote is, the pain that you create now is always some form of non-acceptance, some form of unconscious resistance to what is. On the level of thought, the resistance is some form of judgment. And that's from Eckhart Tolle. And Bill goes on to say, we're our own worst enemies. Usually the heaviest punch you will receive will be of your own hand. And amen, Bill, that's true. And that goes back to what we said earlier briefly, which is when we pursue our vision, it's always bigger than us. And it comes from within us. Its roots are in the heart. So as we feed our vision, we stretch from the inside out, and it's going to manifest resistance. In fact, one of my writing mentors, Stephen Pressfield, who wrote Do the Work and The War of Art, says we need to make friends with our resistance and our fear and doubt, because when we're really engaged in stretching into fleshing out our vision, we're going to scare the shit out of ourselves on a daily basis. We're going to make a career out of that.
Right.
And we're always going to see and feel resistance, fear, and doubt. Those are benchmarks. That lets you, if you're pinning your ears back, you're on the right path, baby.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I agree. It's just if you can't find some form of, if you can't put yourself in some type of zone where you feel uncomfortable and you're not willing to feel uncomfortable, then you probably need more time to find that place to be where you can deal with pressure and you could deal with a lot of the again the blowback. If you can't deal with the pain, if you can't deal with the suffering, I'm not saying that you have to do that. No one should ever have to do that. That's why there are incubators. That's where there are other entrepreneurs who are willing to help you do that. But I think it's kind of a universal truth that everyone has to go through some form of pain in order to achieve greatness. And we can always achieve some form of greatness if we're willing to put the best foot forward. And I have always said, like, oh, you got to put your best foot forward, but it really means something to me when I say that. It really truly does, because I have never in my life experienced the level of where I am mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I don't think I've ever reached this level. And to hear people say, "Oh my God, I'm noticing like this change in you," and they not only like this morning I was at a coffee shop and the guy that I normally see, he goes, "You lost like a massive amount of weight." To me, that feels it feels really great. But what's also interesting though, George, is that I was mentioning to someone the other day about how all of the weight that I have lost has led to a physical change, but a lot of that weight that I had lost was very spiritual to me.
Yeah,
It was
baggage you were carrying with you.
right. They were poor relationships. They were still poor relationships. I still consider it the food that I had eaten probably 12 years ago in that poor relationship, and I felt as though a lot of that has still been bottled up inside of me, and I needed to release it. That's why I felt so terrible. So in order for me to advance further with teaching people how to podcast, how to repurpose podcasting, how to repurpose your podcast or your YouTube video into a podcast, into a blog, into whatever it may be, I felt as if I couldn't find and focus on myself and go through that pain of actually getting on an elliptical machine or jumping on a treadmill and feeling that pain. Well, the pain would only be temporary, but I would know that at the end of the day that it would have a reward at the very end. I would get a reward, not just physically, but very, very much spiritually and mentally.
Well, it's movement. You're moving blood, you're building muscle, you're pushing out toxins. That's more than a metaphor, a spiritual metaphor. It's a
Absolutely.
spiritual practice. The other thing I really want to bring in that is not quite esoteric, I think it'll be easily digested by our friends in the live tribe and the replay city, is, I trained in Gold Shield Qigong. I was a student of Lakota medicine interpreter, and I was trained in what was called warrior training, which had nothing to do with war or fighting. It had everything to do with being a conscious intercessor for peace. But, one of the things that Shannon's talking about is to great effect, positive effect of his presence and his voice on the radio and just, in his place in the world, has everything to do with how he cultivates himself, his body, his consciousness, and his heart. So first and foremost, we have to have an aligned intention to be as vital and vibrant and thriving as we can if we're entertaining the notion to be a public voice, period. Because whether we like it or not, we are modeling something for someone, and quite possibly, if you get closer to the fruition of your dreams, you are modeling for millions of people. Let's just put that out there. That's your potential. So the reality is, the deeper we take our intentionality, our purpose, and how we feed our presence and our vision, the more potent and powerful our voice becomes. And that allows us to shoulder the responsibility of either being some sort of influence in changing the world for the better, or inspiring others to influence and change the world for the better? Speak to that if you can, if you will. I know you can.
I just think that if we can't focus on self, self is so important. It's not selfish, but the idea of focusing on self is the ability to give. If that makes any sense, your ability to give back in some way, because not only do you go through a transformation process, whether it be physical and mental and spiritually, but you are able to not only gain that experience and that knowledge and that wisdom and put it back out into the world and hopefully see someone excel, go beyond, or even reach a small goal of losing 5 pounds, or making $1,000 on a webinar, or getting 2,000 downloads on a podcast. I think the self needs to come first at any moment and every time, but it needs to be a conscious effort, and you have to put that forth in order to see. I use success loosely because success will always be there. It comes in little bites and chunks. I think people like to see success as this massive thing that happens all at once, and it's never like that. My success at the radio station didn't come right away. 15 years, those were all little baby successes, and now all of a sudden I've gone to the point where I'm now starting to highlight the fact that I've been at the radio station for 15 years. And people are like, I'm so proud of you. Last night I just spoke with a former girlfriend of mine who is a dear friend of mine now. And we were talking about the time when I had dated. We had both dated, and I told her, I said, I feel somewhat bad that you had to go through that process with me. And she says, no. And she says, she told me, I think that you focusing on your career was probably the most important thing for you to do. She says, because now I look at you and I just think, oh my God, I can't believe it. You've done this 15 years and now look at what you're doing. To me, I don't see it that way. But for her perception to see me as a success, hey, great, that's fine. I'm always working, though. I'm always working to become a better version of myself. And I think everyone should always be working to be a new and better version of themselves every day, whether that take up meditating, take up an exercise routine, take up eating healthy. Another friend of mine said when he went through his weight loss journey, it was a matter of eating one piece of fruit a day. And if he could eat one piece of fruit a day, he knew he could change his life because they were small incremental changes. And now he's running 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, half marathon, just everything. So everything's a process, and you are able to take a lot of what you internalize and put it back out into the world for the greater good and to help people succeed. And then the process just goes over and over. It's just a recycled process that you should intentionally make.
The reality here, friends, and Shannon, I couldn't have said it better than you just did, is it's baby steps. Our success is not defined by the lifestyles of the rich and the shameless. At least I'll define my success is, did I make someone else's life more meaningful? Did I inspire them? Did I provoke them to have a conscious thought, to move into an inner or outer inquiry? That's why I get up in the morning. Those are the things that I can't not do, and that's why I'm some long-haired, silver-haired goober on the interwebs here with Shan Man today. It's something I can't not do, and the more I embrace that, the more I surrender to what is, in part, my greater purpose, the more frickin' fun I have. My God, this is the playground. That's why I call it the playground. I'm going to take a quick shift here, and let's get a fist bump and a shout out to Mia Boss Like a Boss.
I love my bra.
Said, yeah, Brahim's. She says, skating in late, sitting in the back of the room here to support George Green and my brother Brahimi. Brahimi. I have dyslexia. Love what you're saying. And, hey, Bill Reed. So thanks so much for being here with us, Mia in the house. We love and appreciate your presence and participation here. Nazim says, it is always a long building process towards the road to success in whatever we do. Let's see. We want to grab one or two more good ones here. Catherine, you can't help anybody if you're not in a strong space, which means you need to invest in
Mm-hmm.
yourself, and yourself first and foremost. That's the other side of the balance. We're inviting you, friends, Live Tribe, to set some fires inside your heart and, break your foot off in your backside if you have to be invested in serving. There are a lot of people out there that are so over invested in serving that they never take care of themselves. They're either at the back of the line or they're not even in the line. And when you see them, they're diminished. Their energy is flat or deficient. We have to feed our hearts and our visions first and foremost to have the courage to call other people up and out. So, Shannon, what I'd love to do is let's just dive straight into a bit of the juice and mojo of your training. Tell us a little bit about your podcast and performance training, if you would.
Yeah, so podcaster performance is it is a 4 module course. It could take anywhere up to 4 to 5 weeks, but basically what it focuses on is starting a podcast from A to Z, but also allows you to not only start that podcast, but implement the performance techniques. I'm adding different performance techniques in there all of the time. They're becoming a performer is about becoming a great broadcaster or broadcaster. If you can't keep an audience engaged through what you have to say, through the inflections in your voice, through the keywords that you're putting out there, and through the brevity of your podcast, then you might be losing your audience. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've gone ahead and created 4 modules with video workshops. There's 5 lectures that are in there, along with how-to trainings, workbooks. There are workbooks on how to edit your audio. There are workbooks and checklists on how to get your podcast from WordPress into the iTunes store without flaw. So I have spent hours upon hours working on this. Nazim and Mia were actually 2 of the students that were in that course that took that, and I know Nazim, he is right at the edge of launching. I know he's still working. He still has some personal things and personal items that he needs to take care of, but he is that much closer to launching his podcast. And podcasting doesn't have to be a super long process to launch, but all of those materials are there for you. And I've also included additional training on how to maintain and keep listeners coming back to your podcast. So the training is extensive, and it will only get more extensive. This is really more of the result of a seed that I have created, and now the seed, I'm going to start to watch it grow and hopefully mushroom out into something a lot larger.
So this is either 1.0 or 2.0, and we can count on this platform evolving over time. Now, is once people invest, are they able to return and do the practice over, or how does that work?
Yeah, so if when they do invest, they go ahead and they invest, and they get the course for a lifetime with updates automatically over and over. So they get lifetime updates, and not only will it be about podcasting, I also have a Google Plus training in there for those people who aren't familiar with Google Plus. But since we're here on Google Plus, I can only assume that people who are using Google Plus know how to use it. But I have a MailChimp training in there. There's more trainings that I'm adding to it, that I have written a list of videos that I want to include, because I feel it's very important that people know how to use their email marketing program to drive traffic to their podcast. And the people that I have met with who have used email marketing, they use it to the very basic and bare minimum, where why have that program when you could put it on steroids and have it do more than what you can possibly imagine? So there's a lot more in that course that I want to add. Podcasting, there's just the practice of actually presenting is just practice, and that's what I encourage consistently and constantly, is practice over and over. It's just like you, George, doing a pod or doing your hangout. You just do it over and over. You find your groove eventually, and then the goal at that point is to improve on who you are, not just with your hangouts, but anyone else's hangouts.
Right, and it's just some great backstory to add into the playground here. Is I had My original TV show was on live stream. It was about 6 years ago when the platform and the technology was nascent and really sketchy. I had great engagement numbers, and I loved doing my show every week. But I also could chew through a telephone pole 5 minutes before I got on. I was nervous, but and like a lot of people, like Henry Fonda, this was an amazing fact I learned from Stephen Pressfield. Henry Fonda was throwing up off stage 5 minutes before he stepped on stage for theatrical productions when he was 75.
Mm-hmm.
So that that excitement, we can shift our anxiety or our trepidation into excitement. But the reality is, you know, run forward to today, I was chomping at the bit to start a new show last year, and people like you, the people who know, who've had the experience, were giving us all counsel. You need to build a personal presence and engagement. You need to build relationships
Mm-hmm.
before. So when I finally got the universal green light, and I like to say God broke his foot off in my backside and said, "Go, son, go!" I was on it. It was like I had all this pent up love and desire to host and produce a show, to find my voice, and over time, and over learning more and more from people like you and people who model like Mia and so many other people that have really committed to showing us the way, I did find my groove. I found a great level of comfort, and now my show feels like a nice worn pair of jeans or a 5 year old pair of cowboy boots that are on their third heel and sole. They're
Right.
more like slippers than boots. So, but that took my commitment to learning, not just to have a show and be satisfied with that. I want to. My desire, and I say this at the beginning, is that my shows are buzzworthy, they're replay worthy, they're share worthy, they're legacy products that people refer back to over and over, not because of me, but because of the conversation you have with me, the information, the inspiration that you share with us in this public way. We're going to circle back around to one more question, but first, I want to say thanks again to Mia Voss, who says, "George Green, silver-haired goober, you are rocking it." And I mean, that's part of my comfort is I'm unvarnished. This is me. This is not my show persona. This is my, wingnut yahoo personality all out in front. So we really appreciate your enthusiasm and you being a part of it, Mia. So Shannon, we're coming towards the completion of our show. We're going a little bit long, and that's well worthy of our extra time. I'm going to invite you to throw down with a call to inspiration and action, not so much like a call to action in a sales way, but in a spiritual, personal, encouraging, and inspiring way. Um, Go ahead and light some fire, shake some trees, and get this party started.
Well, I think if there's something that comes to mind in the beginning, just to think right now, I think it's simple. Breathe. You need to breathe, and understand. Feel the breath. Feel the breath inside of you. Feel it coming inside your lungs, and just how it resonates with the entire soul. Find some peace and clarity within yourself, and breathe. Uh, at that point, you need to go into your everyday, and I'm not saying you need to. This is how it must be something that you desire to do. Just as I have had the desire to do it for myself and make a change for myself. But you have to find out if you're worth something, and if you're worth that, then you need to go out and find it for yourself. Because if you don't, and you start pointing fingers and blaming other people for your downfalls and your success, or your unsuccessful attempts, and you blame them, there's no one to blame but yourself. You're blaming everyone else, and that has been a very, very tough lesson for me to learn in responsibility of my own self responsibility of my failures. So find it, find yourself, breathe, wake up every morning, and be grateful for the fact that you can see the blue sky, to feel the sun shining on your face, just the simple things, because those are the things that I think that help you keep going. When you are faced with something such as mortality, I think about it in the sense of like, I'm a 38-year-old man. I'm 38. I still thought I was 15 back in October until I felt my heart was starting to explode and everything was starting to go wrong with me. I mortality played a big part in that. So I started to think about, I want to live the next 15 years of my life more full, experience things that I've never experienced, and to be able to just travel the world and change lives. That's what it really came down to travel around and change lives. Whether, and traveling doesn't necessarily have to be a physical thing. It could mean being on the internet. I'm reaching Denver, but I'm also reaching someone in Washington D.C. right now. That to me is mind blowing. But to actually physically go out and meet them too, and maybe at a conference or maybe be on the street, and to have them see that I actually do exist, and that those changes that I made in my life are the changes they can make in their life to make their life better, to desire to do the same thing. So find it in your own heart and be honest with yourself, because the moment that you're not honest with yourself, you'll be constantly living in a lie.
Mm-hmm. Or living to conform to someone else's expectations instead of your greater purpose. And, you know, one of the things that came up last week with Manny St. Victor was the things that inner arguments are when we ignore, when we stick our fingers in our ears, go, la, 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 I'm not listening to our inner call to purpose and achievement and service. That's the hero's journey. So the one upgrade I offer is, rather than if you find, when you find your greater purpose, because it's there. And you can look outside, but what Shannon's inviting us to do is to breathe and to recenter ourselves into what I call our most essential conversation. That's the one we have with ourselves in our heart. That's where you find your greater purpose and reason. Final words before we go into your moments in mindfulness, brother.
No, I believe that everyone should find time for themselves and take downtime for themselves to, like you said, recenter, whether that be through meditation, whether that be through reading, whether that be through listening to music. Find time to recenter who you are. Be true to yourself.
Amen, brother. You know, you and I are just getting started. We're just learning about each other. I am so grateful to know you professionally and know you as a friend. And I'm very grateful for your vulnerable and unvarnished presence here today and speaking from your heart. That's why we get up. That's what we do. It's how we roll. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate you. And now, friends, it's time for your moments in mindfulness. Now, Shannon really nailed it by saying, you know, his call to inspiration is to breathe. And that's kind of a new agey, bumper stickerish kind of a thing, but the reality is it's the core of my transformational training. It's the core of my own personal practice, and that is for me simply throughout the day to pause everything and focus on feeling my breath in my body. It recenters myself. It reorientates okay, Lysexia. It reorients myself and my purpose instead of engaged in the externals, to be connected and to be in what I call the remembrance, and that is to remember who I am and why I am here, and to be engaged in the enduring and eternal essential conversation with myself, my heart, my God, my beloved. And the more we cultivate that space as our inner palace and home and operate from there, we find ourselves a much more potent and effective voice for service and inspiration and change. Jean Sartre's partner and mistress, Marie de Beauvoir, once said that life is, and I'm paraphrasing here, life is a constant state of overcoming itself. And if we're only just being the way we've always been, then that's just only not dying. So our combined call for inspiration and action is to kick yourself in the ass, to get up off the bench, get in the game. If your dreams aren't scaring yourself, you're not doing it right. You can't settle. You can't sit back and do autopilot anymore. It's so funny. If you scrub back through different shows, you'll hear at least 4 times since October where I've made the statement that we're now in a unique time where we are all being called up and out. And it's a call that cannot be ignored. If you try, it ain't going to feel very good, and it's going to get worse for you. So it's funny because I had a conversation with someone who's a great speaker and example and model, and she said verbatim to me what I've been saying to myself and my friends just a week ago. So that was like God speaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'm speaking to you today. That's why Shannon and I are joining each other on the playground to offer an invite to wake up. You have a greater purpose. You know what it is, or if you don't, holding your hands over your eyes is not working. And so there's a huge wave of divine discontent, and you just have to bust a move. You have to get out there. You have to trust the fire that's burning inside your heart, and the more you feed the fire, the more the fire feeds you. So, Shannon, what I'd love for you to do is put your link to your website up in comments, and then if you can copy and paste your opt-in link so people can get on your update list. I just really appreciate you as the model that you are for me and the friend you're becoming, because what you do has love and life and integrity. So, again, I thank you very much. You're watching the Mindfulness Advantage Show. We've been playing with Shannon Hernandez, Shan Man, and the conversation is just getting started, friends. I'm going to invite you all to share the show in replay, to come on over to the YouTubes and generate some comments over there. We appreciate your participation and presence. I'm your host, George E. Green. We'll see you next time.